Welcome to Dark Docent. My name is Jake. Join me as I guide my friend James down the paranormal rabbit hole, attempting to prove the authenticity of a new case each week. Today's case, the Dyatlov Pass Incident. So today, James, I brought a guest.
You did.
Everybody, this is our friend Kyle.
Hello, everybody.
Some of you may know him as Kyle. Others you probably won't know him at all.
Probably never see me, but you might hear my voice a couple times.
There we go. Kyle is interested in the case that we are doing today. James, you do not know the case that we are doing today.
I have no idea. It's a nice big surprise for me.
Would you like to dive right into the story?
Yes.
I know Kyle would.
Let's get right into it.
January 28, 1959. We are in Gora Ortortin, which is like an abandoned mining outpost in Soviet Russia. There is a group of 10 students of the Polytechnic Institute of Sverdlovsk. Their goal is to hike up a mountain, do a 300-mile trek, and gain their grade 3 in hiking expertise. This is a big thing in Russia at the time. But one of their group has fallen ill. He won't be able to make the climb, and he has to say goodbye to his friends. That would be 21-year-old Yuri Yudin. Yuri had poor health and extreme joint pain that couldn't allow him to continue this trek. He also had a rheumatism and a congenital heart defect. The fact that he was doing this in the first place I find surprising. But his friends were hugging him goodbye, wishing them the best of luck, and the head of their group, Igor Dyatlov, told him that they'd be back in about 2 weeks due time, but don't expect us to be on time. We may be late. This is a cross-country trek after all, and things can happen. With that, the rest of the group set off. But Yuri Yudin didn't know that that was going to be the last time he saw his friends alive. 2 weeks pass. We haven't heard anything from the group. No calls, no letters, nothing. The school says it's okay. We're sure everything is fine. The group was supposed to be late. They wait a couple more days. On the 15th, the families begin to get concerned. Without any comms or anything, this wasn't supposed to happen. Still, they are told to remain calm. They should be by any day now. February 20th comes around. No sign, no nothing. The families demand a search party go and find their kids. They get search and rescue together. They begin hiking up, going to search, haven't found anything, until February 26th, at an altitude of 800 meters, they find the tent, badly damaged and a large cut on the side of the tent. The group's belongings are in the tent, but there's no people in sight. At this point, there is still hope that they could find the party. Igor Dyatlov and the rest of these people were all extremely experienced hikers, and they didn't have much worry about them. Little did the search and rescue know that they were on the cusp of finding one of the most gruesome mysteries in Soviet Russian history. And to this day, evidence is still being suppressed, and things weren't reopened until 2019. James, have you heard of the Dyatlov Pass Incident?
I have not, but it sounds like a great story.
Kyle certainly has.
I certainly have. Not that I know all the details, but
All right, well, that's why I'm here.
exactly why I came.
This group, as stated, all really good hikers. Igor Dyatlov, the head of them, he was known as a well-respected mountain climber, mountaineer, hiker, outdoorsman. He was known for his leadership, also for just overall how intelligent he was. People invited on his treks were actually, it was considered like an honor to go on a trek with Igor Dyatlov.
Right, he was well respected.
Yeah, and he was only 23 years old. They were going to a mountain that was just known to the Russian people as Height 1079.
Doesn't sound very Russian.
No, but they didn't really have a name for it. It was just a mountain they had to cross to get to where they were wanting to go. However, the Mansi people, who are the local tribes there, had a different name for it. Dead Mountain. Nothing ever grows there. And there's lots of legends based around this mountain that there's a reason the Mansi people don't go up it.
You mean Dead Mountain's not a very popular vacation spot?
It is not a very popular vacation spot. Let me introduce you to the missing party. There's Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, known for his high intelligence, meticulous prep, and the well-respect of all of his peers and teachers alike. There's Zeneda Pomogorova, known as lovely and bright, and she's also known to be a very beautiful girl and almost enchanting to the other male companions. There's Rustem Slobodin. He is the musician of the group. He carried a mandolin everywhere. There's Alexander Kolevatov, very private man, but enjoyed a pint. There's Nikolai Thibault Bugnol. He's a very serious and well-read man, but also very humorous, known as one of the jokesters of the group. There's also Ludmila Dubanina. She was known as an outspoken communist woman with lots of views, but very strong in her presentation of them. Also known as very smart and bright. And the last one, he was not really a part of the group. He was an older companion who the group was like, hey, you can come along. He kind of introduced himself, wanted to be a part of it. His name was Alexander Zolotaryev. He is the oldest and most experienced at 38 years old. All the other people are below the age of 25. He is a World War II veteran. He was already a grade 3 in hiking, but he wanted to come along with these guys, and they thought the experience would help them on their trek. So the goals of their trek was they had to do 186 miles of ground. 1/3 of it had to be difficult terrain. The minimum of days had to be 16, and 8 of them had to be in uninhabited regions.
Hence Siberia.
Basically, that covers the whole part of the uninhabited part, so you don't have to deal with that.
If Siberia doesn't break you, you know you got it in the bag.
Precisely. And 6 of these nights had to be in a tent. So these are very experienced hikers, and this is why it's so weird that they went missing. It wouldn't be abnormal that 1 or 2 would die on a trek like this.
Expected casualties, 1 or 2 to the weather.
Well, it
Attacks.
was really harsh where they were going. But the fact that the whole group of all highly experienced outdoors people went missing is extremely strange. After they found the tent, they decided, it's late in the day. We'll go back. We'll come back with a bigger search and rescue party. Because right now, this party just consists of like the teachers and the families and some of the friends. Like there's not an actual huge party going after this. So the next day, they come back with an actual search and rescue party and they begin searching the area. And this is where the picture of what truly happened to these kids started to paint a very gory and horrifying image.
Did they find some popsicles in the snow?
Yeah, Kyle.
Negative. I am a meat popsicle.
So more volunteers joined the search, including Russian military, which people found kind of strange. They didn't know why the military was there. They also wouldn't talk to anyone.
Just showing up and tagging along.
Yeah. Several tracks were found leaving the tent, and they seemed, some of them, to be wearing socks. No shoe footprints or imprints into the snow. After 500 meters, the footprints disappeared. It had been almost a month since the kids had gone missing. So there has been some snowfall. Some of the tracks had been snowed over.
As you'd expect.
Yeah, this is normal. But about a mile away at the tree line, they found remnants of what looked like a small campfire. And 5 meters off the ground, they noticed broken branches appearing as if someone had attempted to climb the trees around the area. Under those tree branches, they found their first body. That was the body of Yuri Doroshenko. He was covered in cuts and bruises. His nose, lips, and ears were covered in dry blood. His upper lip was bruised, and gray foam substance was dried around his cheeks, suggesting a pulmonary edema. His right temple and 1 foot had been burned. The cause of death was listed as hypothermia.
It would be pretty cold out there.
It would be, but they said none of this would go to his death, which I don't agree with.
Say it again. The signs of a pulmonary what?
Pulmonary edema.
And what exactly is that again?
So pulmonary edema is also known as lung congestion. Occurs when excess fluid builds up in the lungs, making it hard to breathe.
You know what that fluid was then.
Yeah. So it's
like it's so cold and he's so scared and he's breathing so hard. I think it crystallizes in their lungs, and then it ruptures, and you drown your own blood.
That's basically what happened. Still listed as hypothermia.
Yeah, okay, no.
So we'll get into more about the hypothermia
Mhm.
of I would say it's an excuse in this case.
What's a little cold between causes of death?
Did the cold kill him? Sounds like it. Either way.
Yeah, it did. It was a big part of it. But the one thing they also noticed about him is that he was wearing very little clothes. They're almost down in their underwear. That's a death sentence coming out of this tent.
Yeah, sounds like they were trying to escape from something.
They had no time, whatever they were doing.
Yes, the tracks were frantic, and also a thing to mention is the cut on the side of the tent, according to people at the scene, was cut from the inside out, and the front of the tent was buttoned down. So something scared them enough they didn't have time to unbutton their tent. They just cut it and ran.
I don't know how you can tell what side of a tent you cut from.
The threads.
Yeah, if you put that under a microscope, you'd see what was cut first. You could tell. I believe you could tell anyways.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
not going to argue.
That's actually been confirmed that it was cut from the inside out. So something scared them enough they didn't even unbutton the tent, and they didn't even bring any of their belongings or their clothes into God knows how cold weather. Next to Yuri Doroshenko, Yuri Krivonoshenko was found. He was the musician. He had the same bruises and abrasions all over his body. The tip of his nose was missing. The flesh of his knuckle had been torn off his left hand and was found inside his mouth. They claim it was possible that he was biting his knuckle to stay awake or maybe to muffle a cry. Both of his hands were severely burnt. After finding these two, they began to retrace the steps back up to camp. About 300 meters up the slope from the cedar tree, they found the leader of the group, Igor Dyatlov. He died almost in like a crawling position, face down, going up.
I have to finish the mission.
Well, they think, they don't know at this point why he was doing this, but he seemed to be going back to his camp, also not well dressed at all. All of these people that they've found so far, no clothes.
Yeah.
He was found with his hands clasped, arms were tight to his chest, and his watch stopped at 5:31 a.m. He was also covered in abrasions and bruises. There was dried blood on his lips. He was missing an incisor on his lower jaw, and injuries to his hands were consistent to a fist fight. It almost seemed like he was in a struggle against something.
Oh, was his face bruised, it said?
He had a bloody lip. And he had everyone here so far has had bruises and abrasions all over their body.
So I wonder if the tooth could have been lost from like a hit to the face.
Possibly.
That makes a little more sense.
A little further up the hill, they found the body of Zaneta Kolmogorova. She was the one that they believed many of the male companions had a crush on. Her body was discovered face down 630 meters from the cedar tree, covered in abrasions and bruises. She had a foot-long bruise on her lower back, similar to a blunt object impact. And this is important to note, actually. She was not sexually active during the autopsy when they checked. And the reason that this is good to know is because one of the theories on this is that all the men got into a fight over her and that's how they all died. Nothing pointed to
Not
that.
likely.
No.
There's always a last man.
Yeah.
Somebody makes it out of that usually.
And what, there was one tent?
No.
What's that?
There was one tent?
One tent.
And was there not two women on this?
There was two women. I feel like that was just guys pointing shit out that was like on the face value of it without any actual
They're
analysis.
just projecting these like possible ideas to this situation because nobody knows exactly what happened.
Nobody knows.
Looks like everyone got quite the walloping.
Zanea's body covered in abrasions and bruises.
It said specifically a foot-long mark on her back.
Yeah, similar.
Foot-long bruise.
It was similar as if she got hit with a blunt object.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell my theory when this is all done, but I'm painting a picture of what happened here now.
I thought you knew what this was.
No, I didn't know all the details to it all. Like I didn't know what. I knew they all died,
Yeah.
but I didn't know any other detail really.
Okay. This is starting to ring a bell to me. I don't know if there was a show or a movie or something based off of it or an episode on something, but this is starting to ring a bit of a bell.
It's very popular online. A lot of people talk about this one. There's also been similar cases to this around the world. And I think there is a movie about it, but I don't know if it's like an actual like well-made type movie.
I can't say I can recall any mainstream media released about this.
Yeah, there's not much. Lots of it is internet interest.
Yeah, or like a documentary or something maybe.
Yeah. After this, they could find all they could find that day. Things were getting dark. The search and rescue party went back. But they came back the next day. And that's when they found the body of Rustem Slobodin. This was the guy who was carried the mandolin everywhere, the musician. He was found between Zenaida and Igor Dyatlov on the same ridge. Now, when they found him, he appeared to be crawling back to camp just like the other two. But he was one of the few to have footwear. He had one felt boot on his right foot. And that was the only piece of clothing he had on other than his underwear. He was also covered in abrasions and bruises. And he had a fractured skull. But this fractured skull was non-fatal. He was trying to survive with this. They found all these people, and all of their causes of death are Igor Dyatlov, hypothermia. Yuri Doroshenko, hypothermia. Yuri Krivonoshenko, hypothermia. Zenaida Kolmogorova, hypothermia. Rustem Slobodin, hypothermia.
Really getting creative with them there.
Yeah. Every single one of these were listed as hypothermia, which I disagree with highly.
Sounds like they had to tell the newspaper something.
Yes, the head investigator has some stories about what he could and could not say, about what he thought of the investigation, and we will get to that. Here's the other thing that's weird about all these deaths. What they determined by looking at them and the way the rigor mortis had started to set in and all that, all the bodies had been moved post-mortem, except for Igor Dyatlov. Something flipped them and moved them. We don't know what, we don't know who, we don't know how, but they all appeared to die on their backs, but they were found face down in a lot of cases, or on their sides or different locations. It didn't match up with how they were decomposing. After this, they couldn't find any more bodies. They looked around everywhere, they couldn't find a single thing for the other remaining 4 hikers. Until 2 months later, on May 5th, 1959, a Mansi native, which is like their local native, found cotton pants on top of a 6-meter ravine. They figured this is where the rest of the group probably went. They must have fallen into this ravine, but the ravine was about 6 meters deep and it was full of snow up to 4 meters. They started to dig it, try to investigate it, get all the snow out, and eventually they did find the last 4 hikers at the bottom of this ravine. On May 5th, the bodies were dug out of the ravine under 4 meters of snow, but they were all better dressed. One of them appeared to die of hypothermia, and they assumed that they were taking the clothes off of the other bodies possibly because they were better dressed. They had more stuff on them. Still not enough to survive in the cold, but it was there. They found a hastily built den suggesting survival in the ravine, but their injuries were far more gruesome than the ones up top. Alexander Kolevatov, the private one who enjoyed the pint, was found with a broken nose, deformed neck, missing eyes, and soft tissue around the eyes. And there was also an open wound lining the entire back of his left ear. And here's the weirdest part. On his clothes, they found radioactive material. And this isn't the only spot where they found it in this crime scene. In that pit, they found the other 3. Alexander Zolotaryov. He was the older man, the World War II vet. His cause of death was a crushing injury to the chest. All bones in his upper chest were fractured, and there was a large open wound on the side of his head so deep you could see the skull. He was missing his eyes and eyelids, and was found with his hands frozen holding a pen and a piece of paper, like he was about to write something down, but couldn't quite live long enough to do it. Beside him was Nikolai Thibault Brignot. He was the well-read and humorous one. His cause of death? Massive impact to the skull. Multiple temporal bone fractures. They found that him and Zolotaryov were the best dressed of the group, had the most clothes. His head's completely smashed in on the side of it. They also found Ludmila Dubanina just a little further away from them, and she suffered the worst injuries. She was the youngest member of the group, very witty. She was the outspoken communist political member of the group. She was also found with a crushing chest injury. Only 8 ribs were intact in her upper body. She had missing eyes, eyelids, tongue, soft tissue around the mouth was missing as well, and there was also blood found in the stomach, indicating that the tongue was removed while she was alive. On her clothes as well, they also found radiation. What are you guys thinking so far about all this? They've now found all the bodies. Some of them are covered in radiation, and they've only gotten more gruesome as time has gone on.
A couple Arctic foxes escaped from a Soviet nuclear testing lab and killed them. Easy.
They were like rabies, but radioactive rabies.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we're standing on, radioactive rabies Arctic foxes?
Well, I mean, I was kind of going along with your theory. I have my own theory, but the radioactive part is very tricky to try and box into a story.
It's weird. The party that was not in the ravine, the more exposed ones closer to the camp.
Mhm.
It's weird that they had less serious injuries compared to the people who were down the ravine. Maybe unless they got dragged down the ravine, but if they were hiding there, then you think they would have maybe gotten away a little easier.
Now, did you say the ones that they found in the ravine had built some sort of makeshift shelter?
Yeah, it appears that they dug into the snow a bit and made almost like
an igloo type,
yeah,
insulated type idea?
Yeah, just to insulate them from the weather.
That doesn't take long at all to make.
No, it's like they haphazardly dug it and just kind of, they were trying to wait out what they believe was possibly a storm. I think the weather was terrible that night.
That's the problem with the snow is it's very obvious where everyone's been going in it with tracks.
If it's not snowing to cover your tracks right away, it's very obvious.
Yes, and up until now, they have found no other tracks except for the group. Nothing else has been spotted.
Is there any way that they could tell, or if they did, the time of death on the bodies?
It's hard because of how cold it was, but they believe they died around February 1st. And the reason we know this is because they had extensive journals and photographs of their journeys. And so investigators began reading these and finding more about what happened. And with that, they could piece together how everything happened that trip and what went wrong.
Thus, the idea is when they stopped recording, something happened then.
Something happened, but some of the reports and pictures line up with what could have happened.
Well, I can't wait to hear all of that.
James, you've never heard of any of this before. What do you? I'm curious what you're thinking about. I know Kyle's interested.
I mean, I'm definitely interested too. This is crazy. The people up on the surface, like I said, had a bit of a walloping. They got little bruises and cuts all over them, except for one big bruise. But then the people down in the ravine there, missing all these eyes and soft tissue and whatever else. I have no theories.
The people up top also had burns.
Burns, yeah. It's even
But there was a fire.
There was a fire.
How far? Do we know how far that fire was from the tent?
The bodies were found like a mile from the tent. These guys ran down a mountain. They were up on a mountain and they ran for close to a mile to get away to the tree line.
And then they had a fire there.
Yeah, and we'll get into why their demeanor seemed to change as the story goes on.
Yes, and the two bodies, was it, that were found near the fire?
Yeah.
Had burn marks on them?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the site, we also found radiation. The radiation was not just found on their clothes. The radiation was detected in and around the entire area of what's known now as Dyatlov Pass. There was government officials, military officials there with Geiger counters that wouldn't talk to any of the other situ rescue, and they were investigating the area with Geiger counters, finding the radiation. And that's why we know that there was radiation there.
I kind of figured it was a weird thing for them to just stumble across radiation.
How did they figure out the radiation was there?
There was military men there with Geiger counters.
Who was the guy that was like, oh, because they knew.
They knew.
They had a suspicion.
Well, like Jake said, they tagged along, but just refused to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Also, these students, one of them was in school for nuclear physics. So he was around it. So one of the assumptions is maybe he brought it along with him somehow. Maybe he got contaminated and contaminated the rest of the group, which is a possibility.
Hey, guys, I brought a jar of radioactive material.
Well, it could have been on his clothes or something, right? But the thing is I don't see how it would affect the whole area. I could see it getting on some clothes, but it wouldn't.
That doesn't really make sense.
No. But with all these findings, they also investigated Dumanina, Zolotaryev, and Brignot, the two men and one woman who had the most devastating injuries. And the coroner said it wasn't like a blunt force trauma associated with a melee weapon or anything like that. These injuries only occur in car crashes or explosions.
Well, the explosion's a concussive force.
Yes.
But like a car, that's a weird comparison because a car crash is definitely a blunt force trauma.
I mean, an explosion could explain some the small cuts and bruises if shrapnel or debris is hitting them. burns on some people.
Was this all of them, or just a?
Those three. The three in the ravine that weren't dead from hypothermia, Dumanina, Zolotaryev, and Brignol, they were found with injuries only been seen in like car crashes or explosions. Heavy force.
Well, if it wasn't for that makeshift shelter, you could think perhaps they were thrown into the ravine.
Yes, and there's other ideas around that as well.
Is there a map that kind of shows where each of the bodies were found in relation to each other?
I'm glad you asked. I was about to
Actually-
pull that up.
That would be very useful.
It really helped picture. And for everyone listening, you can follow along with photos on our Instagram.
And our Facebook. I post all the case photos there every Friday when I release an episode.
Worth looking at.
This map shows where all the bodies were found, where the campsite was down at the tree line, and also where the tent was. Those dots down on the bottom part is kind of where they came from before they made camp.
And then are we gaining altitude?
Yes. This was up on the side of a mountain.
Wait, is it suggesting that C, E, and D were running uphill or downhill?
So C, E, and D, which are Zeneda Kolmogorova, Igor Dyatlov, and Rustem Slobodin, they were the ones found crawling back to the tent.
Oh,
So they were crawling uphill. I
Really?
believe
Okay.
the height difference is 300 meters.
Their heads are facing down towards the tent on the map.
oh! I just realized that. Yeah, that is a pictograph of their bodies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that makes. I didn't know what that was at first.
Yeah. So that's what those represent the bodies there.
I love how the tent's destroyed in the photo too.
That's
Yeah.
how it looks. Do you want to see a picture of the tent?
It's comic accurate.
I would love to see a photo of the tent, actually.
We're getting into the photos of the site here now.
It's becoming real.
So here's a picture of the tent. This is how it was found. Some of the poles are still up holding it up. There's actually skis there holding it up.
Yeah, because they would have been cross country
Yeah.
skiing too.
Yeah. Lots of this was done skiing.
Yeah.
I do have several photos of the group doing different things like skiing because they documented everything so damn well. But here's the picture of the tent, how they found it. Their belongings are still inside it, all their clothes, everything like that. So that's where the tent was up there. The first bodies found were down by the cedar tree there.
Do find it kind of odd that both the Yuri bodies got put together.
Yes, they were.
I mean, almost always. That's probably a coincidence, but
I think every third person from Russia is named Yuri, so it kinda
either
checks
that or
out.
Nikolai.
Nikolai, Yuri.
Alexander. Yeah.
and
Lots of those.
Last name ends in an ov or a kov.
No, it is strange how it all kind of turned out. I find it weird that they found the bodies down by the tree first before they found the ones climbing up the mountain. And they didn't find Rustem Sloboda until the next day. They found Igor Dyatlov and Zeneda first, and then in between them was Rustem Slobodin, who they found last of those three. So that's strange to
I
me.
mean, there's
It's-
probably enough snow where you can easily pass over them. This is
Yeah.
pretty, it's
There
pretty
is.
long time ago.
No.
And
They're
like
literally just trekking around, probably dealing with poles.
exactly, we're getting this map here, but like in the real world, we don't know what that terrain actually looked like. It's probably covered in trees or like.
It is weird though that they're all in line and, like you say, headed back towards the camp. Some of them,
Yeah.
it's all very odd.
Yes. Sorry, Kyle, what did you just say?
Oh no! What I said was that like we got this map here, and we're
Oh,
sometimes you might think of this as like just a wide open, knolly, snowy hill, but like this could be a forest for all we know.
So there was no forest.
Okay, this was open.
Yeah, so there's a reason. The reason the Mansi people, which was the local tribe, called it
Mhm.
Dead Mountain, is because nothing grew on this mountain,
Except for that big cedar tree.
and that was near the base.
Mm.
That was down the mountain a mile, and that's
Oh,
Oh, so that's
this is over a
going
mile.
downhill?
This is over
okay.
a mile.
I got this backwards here.
So
So
they're going down.
they're descending the mountain at this point.
So
The red dots are coming down.
the red dots was them going. That's where they camped. They came up,
Mm-hmm.
camped, and that's where they found the tent. And then the bodies go down the mountain, facing the tent,
Okay.
and that tent to that tree is a mile.
Okay, I understand now.
So this is like a long ways away, and it's literally a mile of nothing. And the cedar tree was at the tree line.
What is a mile? Like 3-something kilometers?
I think it was like not a full mile. I think it was just under a mile. The estimates I've seen are like a little over a kilometer, but
Sorry,
under a mile.
it is 1.6 kilometers to a mile.
Oh Jesus! I was thinking about a meter and how many feet is in a meter. That's why I got that confused.
Yeah. So they claim this to be like just under a mile or just
Yeah.
over a kilometer sort of range. So this is a long ways away of nothing until the tree line. Thanks to the journals that they have and the photos that they've taken, we can easily tell what happened on their trip. They kept extensive diaries. Would you like to see pictures of the bodies?
No, I thought we'd just go to conclusion.
I can show you. I got lots of photos.
Let's see them.
So there is a website called Dyatlovpass.com that literally has all the photos, journal entries that you need. There is literally a section called Death. Here's the cedar tree that was found. You can see all the branches kind of broken on the side as if someone climbed it. I think they said they went up about 5 meters high. Someone climbed it that high. So that's about 15 feet up. These are how the first bodies were found. And after they were dug up, these are the two Yuris by the fire.
Oh, quite literally side by side.
Yes. No, they were right side by side.
Weird.
And they were moved to that position.
You could tell that they were dragged there.
Not necessarily dragged, but adjusted after death.
Wait a minute. They have clothes on?
Very little. That's a leg there.
Is that not like a jacket?
No, that's like their underwear. And then they had some other stuff around it, but they had like a blanket maybe that they had, but
Like-
they were in their underwear.
Yeah, we're saying underwear, but we're probably talking about what thermal layer.
Yeah, like they had their underwear, they threw a coat on maybe, and that was it.
Yeah, like they had sparing clothing, but they ran down in their underwear. Lots of their main clothes were up still in the tent. Down here, that's just their naked legs in the snow, frozen. This just shows all the injuries they found.
Oh, go up to the
Wow,
injuries real quick.
it's really point to point of everything.
So these guys were near the fire.
Yes. Yeah, this one also had the rigor mortis did not align with how they would have been lying down, so something moved them after death. And we don't know what.
Oh, found particles of what? What did that say?
I believe it was of wood. So the reason they said they found moss and pine needles in their fingertips, and they claimed that was because they were attempting to climb the tree from whatever scared them.
Just trying to desperately skedaddle up it.
Yes, but they also claimed that, as we get into it, I'll explain what else happened here. Here's Igor Dyatlov's body.
This was the one that they said was the only one that did not appear to have been moved.
Yes, this is the only one that was not moved. This is Zenaita's body. This one was moved. This is the one with the bruise on her back. Rustem Slobodin here. He was a little more buried in the snow.
Okay, looking at this, it's really easy to see how they missed one guy.
Yeah,
They are
this,
dug out of the snow.
this is after they've dug him up.
I'm impressed they found them all.
Yeah, I am too. And all of their complexions were apparently like a brown purple. Is how they were described.
Sounds like hypothermia.
But they took that and used it as hypothermia. Here's an image of what the skull fracture looked like on Slobodin. This is where they found the bodies off the ravine. They were all kind of lined up next to each other. You see, like there's a couple sticks there. I think they used to help hold up the snow structure they were making. This is Dubina, how she was found. She was the most decayed, and her head. She was kind of like, see how she's almost like upright, almost a little bit. Kind
Looks
of
like she
folded.
fell face first into the side of a rock there.
Yeah, so she's just leaning against that. And these are the other bodies kind of more beside each other. I've heard it described as like a firing squad.
I was just about to say that.
The way they
yeah.
were lined up, like something put them there.
Well, yeah, because they were moved.
Yeah, 100%. Anyway, that's all the bodies.
Thank you for those images.
You're welcome.
They will never leave my mind.
I'm only here to wreck things for you guys.
And a reminder, you can find them on Instagram and or the Dyatlov?
It's DyatlovPass.com.
It's
DyatlovPass.com.
You can find everything on there. They got everything. If you're interested in this anyway.
The black and white really added to the. It felt very cold when I looked at those pictures.
Yeah, it's spooky images. After finding all the bodies, they investigated the campsite. As stated before, the cuts were made from inside the tent going out, and the front was still buttoned, indicating something was in a rush. Something caused them to leave frantically. Belongings were all left behind, including clothes and shoes. The footprints leading away suggested a frantic escape. Initially, they all split up. The tracks seemed to disperse as soon as they got out of the tent.
No time to think.
No time to think.
That's just a fight or flight response at that point.
Exactly. They seemed to regroup 100 meters from the campsite. After these 100 meters, the group seemed to calm down. They seemed to start walking slowly and single file.
How do you know that? Did you check their Fitbits?
I think the Fitbits were severely lacking in Soviet Russia at the time.
Specifically there.
Just
They
there.
didn't get any of the cool stuff.
They were thriving in like Colombia and England, but Soviet Russia, no. Anti-Fitbit. They began to walk single file, but as they got to where the tree was, the fire seemed to be hastily built, just kind of thrown together real quick.
I guess, yeah, you got hypothermia to worry about at this point.
Yeah.
So perhaps that was a very desperate move. But if you're starting a fire, that's a beacon, right? That's
It is.
a beacon in the night. So this makes me think that, like, there's so many different theories, but maybe it was a dual purpose, right? Like, if it's a fire, is this an animal that attacked them? Because the core consensus is fire. The animals don't like fire. Like, that's the age-old thing.
I can't help but think it'd be for keeping warm. It's
Yeah.
probably pretty frigid in Siberia on the cliffside.
At this point, it seemed that both the Yuris were getting hypothermia very quick, so they
Yeah.
assumed that they were building it for them. However,
Definitely could be. I mean, you don't have a choice. Like, it's freeze to death or turn on the flashlight in the middle of a dark room.
also they couldn't see the tent from this point. From this vantage point, they couldn't see where they once were. So that's why some began to climb the tree. They believed that they climbed up to kind of take a look, see if whatever was there was still there. And they believe this is when Igor Dyatlov, Rustem Slobodin, and Zaneta began their trek back up. And they think that they were going back to the camp to get maybe clothes, some provisions, look like they were trying to sneak back up to where they were. But unfortunately, they died on the way there and they just couldn't do it. This is just the investigators trying to piece together what could have happened. After those three were probably gone for too long, Krivonishenko and Doroshenko, the two Yuris, then died by the fire. They couldn't get it going fast enough. They think the other four, being what they assumed the last ones alive, just ran deeper into the woods, either for protection from the elements or protection from whatever was after them. And they think the two possible things could have happened. They think 3 fell into the ravine, suffering injuries, and the last one came down, building a makeshift shelter for them to survive the cold.
You're telling me all 3 of them accidentally fell in the ravine at the same time?
3 fell in except for 1, is what they're saying.
Oh.
Because one of the injuries weren't as extreme. And that one guy went down and then built the shelters that they could try to survive.
Okay.
Or, the more likely thing I think, they all climbed down the ravine to protect themselves from the elements and other things that could have been out there.
Seems like a good place to hide.
Yes. Also, they tried to use the fall into the ravine as an explanation as to why the injuries were so bad to those that fell. But the coroner said the fall from that height wouldn't have made the injuries that extreme. With that is the entire case of what could have happened to the party of Dyatlov Pass. But people have a lot of theories about this one.
Did any of the diary or journal recordings that they had mention anything weird or suspicious going on?
Oh yeah. Let's get into the theories. This is where it gets fucking weird.
I'm glad this is where it gets weird.
Before I get into the theories that are actually written down, do you guys have theories of what this could have been?
Okay, the weirdest part is the radiation.
Yes.
I mean, like, you could think of a lot of different ways, but that radiation doesn't make any sense. Really. Honestly, James, the radioactive rabies, like, that might not be wrong. Like, because I can't place that. But okay, hold on. Okay, so I'm thinking here.
I told you, it's Arctic foxes.
There's a lot of aspects. You want to hear? Okay. Should I give my suspicions on what might have happened now or later? Should I hold on to those for a minute?
Let's ask James, because we kind of have an idea of what we think.
Okay, James, what do you make of this?
And I don't know is an answer.
I don't know is a great answer. It's kind of what I'm leaning towards.
Yeah.
I don't know where the radiation came from.
Mhm.
I don't know how they got in a car crash on the side of a mountain.
Yes.
It's probably not foxes, but at this point, it's as good a guess as any, I suppose.
Okay, it's probably not foxes, but you're going with the radiation foxes?
I don't think it's foxes.
I don't-
Perhaps a radiation creature of some kind.
Maybe like a very, very, very small tactical warhead.
Okay.
Tactical warhead.
Explosion, radiation.
There's no limbs missing though already?
I said very small.
You know, I know we're kind of making little jokes about that part, but there's actually something to that.
Maybe this used like 1/100th of an atom to blow up.
They were like, what will happen if we use 1/100th of an atom? And they're like, let's test it on these sad sons of bitches.
Yeah.
The
Now, there is actually something to that theory.
explosion theory with the nuclear explosion.
Not nuclear, but there is a theory to that, and I'll get into that. Our first theory of what happened to these people, the most down-to-earth one, is it was an avalanche.
No. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no right now. Because why would a fucking avalanche cut your eyes out, man?
This is Project Blue Book level theory right here.
It's worse than Project Blue Book because it's Soviet Russian. They'll just say whatever.
It's Russia.
It's probably Jupiter or swamp gas.
It's Project Red Book with Hamlin Sickle on cover.
Project Red Book. There you go.
Oh god.
Project Red Book.
Even more blunt than Project Blue Book. Now, as you guys just reacted, this explanation does not stand up. The reason is the mountain was not steep enough for an avalanche. And they were also experienced in the outdoors, and they would know not to camp at a region where it would risk an avalanche. Why would you climb up a mountain?
Oh, I know what happened. That guy played his mandolin at the worst time. He fucking killed them all. Nah, I'm just kidding.
They wouldn't camp in this. Oh, fuck. They wouldn't camp in this sort of dangerous area. The tent was only a little covered with snow, and that was most likely snowfall. And it was still overall standing. The poles were all still in. The avalanche would just obviously sweep it all away.
Obviously.
Also, the hikers would not have outrun it. If it
They
happened.
wouldn't have busted out of the tent and then run a kilometer to escape an avalanche.
No, avalanches go way faster than people actually think. Another thing is, to go back on why they're up this hill, is they most likely lost their way when they were trying to guide their way through, because it was along their route, but they weren't supposed to go up on Dead Mountain. They're supposed to kind of around it. There was a harsh storm that night, and they think that Igor Dyatlov got his maps a little confused and accidentally went up on the mountain range and got a little confused in the storm, and that's why they camped there, just as like a almost desperation. They're trying to find an area just to get out of the storm. So it wasn't perfect, but it was just something they could do.
Someplace they could huddle together, their own warmth to keep them going.
Yeah. Theory number 2. It was a military test. This area was known to be a military testing ground, and this was actually an area where the Russian military would test floating mines, which are mines that are like dropped from a plane and then kind of floated with a parachute, and they blow up about a meter above the ground.
It's like the reverse of a bouncing Betty.
Yeah, actually. Very good point. Yeah, like a reverse bouncing Betty.
That's fucked up, though.
A sinking Bobby. So
A sinking, what did you call it?
Bobby.
Thinking Bobby.
This one was very quickly debunked. There was absolutely no sign of explosion in the area. Even if you got under the fresh blanket of snow, there was no disturbance of the snow. The snow was still like a white blanket. If there was an explosion, there'd be an indent with the fresh snow, obviously, right?
You can tell.
Maybe
You could
some
tell.
material, some shrapnel, anything.
Nothing. Yeah, there's nothing there.
If they're getting Geiger counters out, they'd be able to tell.
Has the military had anything to say at all?
We'll get to that.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're onto it. That's our third theory.
Why are they there? What do they know? We've just ignored them the whole time,
Well,
even though they've been around.
To be fair, it's on one of their testing sites, so they would have been there regardless, I believe.
Mhm.
Hence why it also was Hill whatever. It didn't have a name. Because I don't want no fucking guys going up there. It's taking a vacation.
This area was known as Sector 41, Height 1079.
Yeah. Basically, it says, don't look at me on a map.
Essentially.
Yeah.
This is the middle of absolute nowhere. Our third theory is it was a third party. Initially, everyone thought it was the Mansi tribe that killed them all. The local Mansi people argued this, said no, was not us, and actually they helped in the investigation to find the missing kids because
The perfect cover.
I was going to say, that's like a classic thing.
it was...
We didn't do it. In fact, we'll help you figure out
We
what
oddly
happened.
know
'cause
exactly
it
where
really
everything
wasn't
is.
us.
Mansi tribe was considered as suspects. Mansi tribe don't have access to radiation. The suspicions against them were dropped very quickly. There was not much to connect them. The Mansi tribe actually doesn't go up this mountain because they have legends about this mountain that they don't want to go up this mountain.
What kind of legends?
We'll get to that.
Yeah, that's important. I need to know that.
They also suggested Russian special forces.
Also known as Spetsnaz.
The reason they suggest this is the way the party kind of stopped and calmed down and began to walk in single file, almost as if they dispersed and then got caught. This is considered highly unlikely due to there being no tracks, nothing stolen, anything like that, showing that there wouldn't be a third party there. However, Yuri Yudin, the one that went back because of his illnesses, claims that this is what he thinks happened. He thinks they came across a Russian military test that they weren't supposed to see, and the Russian military offed them and made it look like something worse. The head investigator of the Dyatlov Pass incident claimed that the Russian military was found at the campsite 2 weeks prior to the search and rescue, and apparently possibly could have covered up whatever details they were there. This would explain why the school and the city and stuff was postponing searching for the kids.
Yeah, but no matter what happened there, the military's gonna be there.
Yeah.
Like, you can't say just because they're there that they're the ones who did it.
Yes.
They're the classic cover-up guys.
I don't think there's much to that one, but it's interesting. This is the one that I find, other than Avalanche, this is the one I find least convincing. An internal conflict in the group. If you look at the pictures of the group, they seem to be having a great time. They were all very professional. The internal conflict, they say, was based on their love for Zenaida, which, again, was proven false. And they just wanted to say, like, Zenaida was known for attracting the boys, and they wanted to use that against her character, I find. I don't think that has anything to do with what happened here. But
what I'm hearing is that she was just a bright light that was along for the adventure.
Yeah. This next theory, I don't necessarily find unlikely, but I find very interesting. Espionage. Now,
because the one guy had access to radioactive aspects of the...
Yes, but also, there was that older gentleman.
Mr. 38-year-old.
Semyon Zolotaryev. He was a lot older than the group, had military training and experience in World War II, and some say that one of the group could have possibly used the hike as a cover-up. It wasn't an actual trek, and they believed that some of the members were possibly meeting with Western agents. This could have caused a conflict in the group, causing them to invite, and maybe the Western agents, just to cover everything up, killed them all off. I find it interesting.
It just doesn't sit right in my mind.
Thing. None of it really sits right.
If everyone wasn't on board with seeing Western agents, then why would they bring anyone not on board with it?
I think they maybe found out. If this is a feasible explanation, maybe they found out and didn't like where it was going, and they found out like wrong. They maybe misheard something.
But to what end? Like, what was the goal? Why would this have surfaced on a hike like this?
I don't know. This is just another one of the theories thrown up there, that this one of them was like a spy for the U.S. government and was trying to bring information back to agents, meeting in the middle of nowhere so no one could detect them.
Like what, some like guy was going to come in Red Dawn style, but for the United States, parachute in, and they're going to like...
Yeah, but the part that I find most unlikely about this is that it was a military testing ground.
Yeah, so why would you want to get the airspace covered?
Why would you want to meet there?
Yeah, well, I assume the Western agents would know that as well.
100%.
I feel like this is less likely than the Avalanche.
Yeah, I'm not believing this one too much.
No.
Although, if an Avalanche did beat them all up, knock a few of them into a ravine, and then a fox came along and ate their eyes out.
Okay, so that is definitely a possibility, but...
And then there's just radiation in the area because it's a testing zone.
Yeah, but...
Okay, solved.
Why does an animal just... I don't think that's exactly how they... Like, why wouldn't an animal go for the meat? Like the actual meat that would sustain them. Why would they just eat an eye and a nose?
They're confused from the radiation poisoning.
I don't know enough about radiation to say that's wrong, but definitely something to think about.
Just a theory.
Here's where we get to the weird theories, and this is where it gets fun. Was the Dyatlov party stalked by a Yeti?
Okay, this is exactly what I was waiting for. Exactly.
Now, there is something to this, and I'll explain what. The reason people say that it was a Yeti stalking them is because a note found in the tent said, "We now know the snowmen exist." And there was a picture, now known as the infamous Frame 17, of a strange, blurry creature seemingly stalking them through the woods.
Conveniently always blurry.
It's just a blurry creature.
Just a blurry photo from the 50s.
I'll show it to you right now. It's a pretty famous photo. It's one of the famous ones from the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Here is the photo of the purported snowman on the Dyatlov Pass trek.
Oh man, that's really on point. That's a little much. Like, I would have believed it more had it just been the piece of paper. Let me see this. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
That is a photo of a humanoid figure stepping out from behind a tree in a classic Bigfoot Yeti pose.
And of course, it's blurry.
And
okay,
it's blurry.
But hold on a second. How did this photo get attributed to that piece of paper?
So here's the thing. This is one of the last photos found on their cameras. And I don't think it's a Bigfoot.
I do not think so either. This looks like one of their members of the expedition somebody took a picture of.
Yes, it was. I think it was one of the Yuris. There's actually a picture of them before this. I went through all the frames, and there was a man in a very similar suit that looked like that. Other cryptozoologists and the guys who study Bigfoot said no, the proportions are not Bigfoot-like; they are more human.
This is human proportions. I'm looking.
It's
at.
just a guy.
Yeah.
It's just a guy. So
But that piece of paper is interesting.
So I don't think maybe they saw a snowman? Who knows?
An interdimensional snowman.
Because we all know on this podcast that Bigfoot are interdimensional beings.
We do. We've mentioned that several times, or at
And-
least once.
Even our skeptic believes it. That's a fact.
It is a fact.
So I personally do not think it was a Bigfoot or a Yeti. There was no tracks found in the area. And there was wildlife tracks found in the area. There was like deer and stuff like that, but not even a bear. It's like nothing even remotely comparable to what a Yeti footprint would look like.
But hold on a second. There's snow here. If it snows the next day, that footprint's gone.
Yes.
Not the strongest theory to displace that way.
No, but not even any imprints of Bigfoot or anything like that were there, but the tracks of the people were still there. So I don't think it was a Bigfoot. Next theory, this will be James's special theory. Cursed or haunted by evil spirits. The Mansi tribe have always believed that this mountain is cursed in some way. It has a strange way of being affiliated with the number 9. The Mansi tribe talked about 200 or 300 years before this party of 9 was killed, another group of 9 were killed in a very similar fashion on the same mountain. Also, in the same area, in 1991, a plane of 9 crashed on the mountain, killing all 9 people.
And 1991 has 2 9s in it.
Yes, it does. But the Mansi tribe do believe the number 9 and this mountain could be cursed in some way. This has been going back through their history that there's something strange on the mountain. That's just another theory.
Well, if there's one thing I know about curses,
Yeah.
is they're not real.
I mean, you wouldn't really know if they're real till it happened to you.
We got to get you in one of those cars like old James Dean there.
Hey, we talked about it.
Yeah, episode 3, one of my favorites. We talked about the curse of Little Bastard, James Dean's car. Now, take that for what you will. The people of the area believe that it's haunted. Now, here's the final theory, and I think is the theory. UFOs. Yep. Aliens.
Hence the radioactive material.
Hence the radioactive material. Now, I know James is smiling.
I'm more of just disappointed.
Why?
I don't know. I don't like any of these theories so far.
Here, this one has some weight to it, and I'll show you why.
Okay.
The reason that people are saying UFOs is because there was another group a few miles away hiking around this area that claimed on the night of February 1st, they saw lights over Dead Mountain. Strange lights in the sky. There was also local Mansi tribes in the area that night that also claimed to see these strange lights over Dead Mountain. The Mansi also talked about how the phenomenon of strange lights over Dead Mountain and the Ural Mountains altogether are fairly well known in the Mansi tribes. There's always something strange over these mountains. Also, the other weird thing about this is the final photo. This is the last known photo, frame 34. Something strange. Lights with a dark background.
That's quite literally just blur.
Yes, it's the last photo taken on their camera roll. You gotta think, if it was in the situation they were in, they got these clunky big cameras, they're leaving their tent in a rush, and one of them tries to snap a photo of whatever's in the sky.
I would describe that photo as if you're taking a photo through like a windshield or a glass and there was a couple raindrops on it, and then you blurred that extremely, and then the light caught those raindrops.
So these guys went out of a tent, they cut their way out of a tent, they have no clothes on. The guy gets a big fucking chunky camera. He tries to get it up there, has no time to focus the lens. It's snowing and windy at the time, hitting the lens, causing it to make that windshield effect, and then he tries to snap a photo, and that's all he can get. That's what you'd get in that situation.
And then the aliens just roughed him up a bit and then stole the other one's eyes.
Well, we'll get into this. They think that these UFOs attacked these people, and the reason they think the area was covered in radiation, but head investigator Lev Ivanov was the one who was looking through all the trees and everything, and he found burn marks on the trees and the branches, but it was like in a very focused area. They were circular on the trees. He said that it was almost as if the branches and trunks were singed with some kind of heat-based weapon, a death ray, if you will. And this was found in a few trees. This would also explain some of the burns possibly on some of the people and why some of the branches were burned and snapped, because they did climb up there trying to figure out what was over there.
Sounds kind of like it could have been a very, 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 very small nuclear explosion, like I said.
Here's the thing. The bodies were also somewhat consistent within the United States, what we would know as cattle mutilations, where things are almost surgically removed from bodies. Have you heard anything about cattle mutilations before, James?
You have told me a bit about them in the past.
Laser precision, things being removed from cattle overnight with no tracks. There was a cattle mutilation in Washington State about 20 years ago, and it had a cow taken, mutilated, its genitals were gone, everything was seemingly cut with laser focus, and it was dropped back down exactly where the cow laid, no tracks, no nothing. It was almost as if it was lifted and then dropped in the same area, and its bones were impacted as if it fell from a great height, similar to these men and women at Dyatlov Pass with the crushed bones. It seems to line up, and it is also not the only case we have of apparent UFOs going after people the same way they go after cattle and cattle mutilations. This is a report that happens all over the world. There's also a report in Brazil of a whole town being invaded by UFOs from 1978 to 1980, where over 100 people got attacked by them. It's consistent with these cases from all over the world. Lev Ivanov was also told by the Soviet government specifically to keep anything to do with aliens or UFOs out of their report. He was told that by the government unprompted. Why would they say that? Didn't have to say that. Why did they say that? His final answer to what happened that night, February 1st of 1959, was that the skiers died due to a compelling natural force that they could not overcome. In private, Lev Ivanov told everyone he thinks aliens killed these people. Now, I know that's a lot. I know I look insane right now.
You're not insane. Nobody knows exactly what happened, but that just doesn't sit right.
It doesn't sit right, but the thing is that there's not many holes in it. With all the other theories so far, there's holes you can easily poke a finger through and completely demolish the entire argument. The only thing you can say about UFOs is they don't exist, which, by the way, we know they do. And this is not the only time they've reported UFOs in the area. There is corroborating witnesses from kilometers away that said they saw lights in the sky over Dead Mountain that night. There's a Mansi tribe and other hikers that were within 3 miles of the area that saw it.
Were these continuous lights?
They were not continuous. They were like flashing strange lights flying through the sky.
Did this party have access to flares?
This party had a flare gun and was not fired.
Final theory that just adds on to my previous theory of the little explosion. If there was an explosion and something was dropped, then perhaps a plane of some sort was flying over and had flashing lights on it, and or the little boom would have a flashing light accompanying it. That would explain the lights. That could explain the scorch marks on various trees and people. That could explain the radiation. That could explain the blunt force trauma on them that was consistent with perhaps a car crash or explosion. And then their eyes fell out.
I get where you're coming
from the radiation, of course.
Popped out of their head.
Right, okay. Well, I get the argument, but there was no sign of an explosion. If there was anything to scorch...
it's snow covered. The snow melts, the snow falls back down.
Yes, I know, but it would come back uneven. This was still a fresh blanket of snow undisturbed.
Well, not necessarily. It's been a month. It was a month after they disappeared that they were found.
Yeah.
A lot of snow can fall in a month in Siberia, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't still be uneven, and you know what? I'm sure it was uneven. It's a cliff face.
Okay, yes.
I don't think it was just
It wasn't a cliff face, it was a slight slope.
Or whatever it was. It wasn't just a perfectly flat field, I'm sure.
It was about a 30-degree incline.
But Jake.
There's breeze, there's wind, there's snowfall. I think it could very easily have been covered back up.
Did the other group hear an explosion?
There was no reports of explosions in the area.
They would have heard it.
They would have. That's another thing I was going to go on to. Also, if there was an explosion and it scorched things, it would scorch a whole tree, not parts, not focused parts. There's focused circles on the trunks of the tree. Why would it only focus on parts? If you explode something by the tree, the whole tree would be scorched.
What exactly did they say about these scorch marks on the tree?
There was a large circle on the tree. It was like a black scorched part, and that's where they found more radiation.
So the aliens put their call sign on the tree?
The aliens were firing a heat weapon at the people on their mountain.
Heat weapon, but only 2 of them had heat-related issues.
Yes, but they said the marks on the tree were similar to something like a heat-based weapon. That was what the head investigator said.
Explosions are heat-based weapons.
But they wouldn't scorch only parts, they would scorch the whole tree.
Depending where the explosion was, and depending on how big of one it was, and depending on how much snow was on the side of the tree at the time.
It still would have scorched the whole tree.
Did the members of Dyatlov Pass have any weapons of any kind?
Not to my knowledge. But seeing lights in the sky would cause you to run. And those reports that the lights in the sky are corroborated. It's the only theory that's corroborated by other witnesses outside of the Dyatlov Pass group. And it's also known that there are lights in the sky in this area.
Well, we also know that planes have lights on them, and
They
it's a
don't
military
float,
testing
James.
zone.
They don't float, James. Planes don't float. Planes, okay, so
What do they
planes.
think? They're in
listen,
the sky.
Listen, planes are the Bigfoot costume of UFOs. It's very easy to distinguish a plane from a UFO. This were not a plane. You would hear it, it would be flying, and they would not be floating. These were floating lights in the sky moving around erratically.
Well, I've seen planes far away before. We have sky above us, and you don't always hear them when they're further away, but you can still see the lights.
They're not floating.
So this group that was nearby, enough to see these so-called lights, said exactly what? That these lights floated?
Yeah,
and by floating, do you mean just stayed perfectly in space or in place?
I've heard that they were like erratically moving around on top of the mountain, and the Mansi corroborated that they've seen these lights before and they don't know what to make of them. And there's stories of these lights going back through their history. There's also other stories of other people seeing lights on top of these mountains. It's not a one-time thing. And literally the only thing you can say about it is aliens aren't real. That's not a real argument, since we kind of do know that UFOs are being argued about in Congress at the moment, as we speak.
When were these people killed? 19 what?
February 1st, 1959.
It could be prudent to know that, well, I guess it depends how far back these so-called light sightings go, that I believe they did in fact have helicopters conceived at this point in time.
Yes, they did.
Which would have seemed like floating lights in the sky.
Yes.
And being a military site, would not be unheard of to see them practicing in such an area.
Yep.
But I don't know how far back these sightings go.
These sightings go back through Mansi history. They have legends of strange lights over these mountains. Even up till today, there's sightings of strange lights over the Ural Mountains. So it's not a singled out thing. Helicopters have been pointed out before, but this is like a consistent strange phenomena they can't explain. So just another theory. It could be UFOs, and in my opinion, I lean heavily that that's what it was. But there are some newer theories. In 2013, there was a book released by Donnie Richard called Dead Mountain, and he proposed his own theory. He proposed a theory of infrasound, an ultra-low frequency that causes nausea, fear, dread, and sometimes hallucinations. And apparently, the light slope of Dead Mountain, crossed with very particular circumstances, with the winds and everything around it, could possibly make these frequencies. This could have caused them to freak out, cut open the tent, and run as fast as they could. However, these frequencies don't cause this much paranoia for this long. Like, they wouldn't run down a mile down a mountain the whole time. They would most likely figure it out a lot sooner than that. But it is an interesting theory.
We can't forget all the missing eyes as well.
Yes, that's another thing. That's another one of those theories that explains why they got out of the tent, but not the rest of it.
Can I propose a theory here?
Yeah.
I like this new theory you're talking about. I'd never heard of this one before.
It's a new one.
It just makes me think that maybe there's a lot more aspects that created this situation than we maybe think there is. And obviously we're getting such snippets of information that we don't even know if it's all true. But if I'm going off, if it is all true, I'm hearing these words and taking it as face value. I'm leaning towards the Yeti still. And I'll tell you why.
Okay, I'm down. It's getting weird. Let's go.
Okay, so the Mansi people, so eager to help.
Yep.
Number one suspect. Oh, I'll help you find the bodies. That's because they know what happened. But they need to still try and find a way to control the situation. Okay. So we have the Dyatlov group. They're camping.
Yep.
Maybe they kind of get sort of lost or bad positioning and whatever. They got their tent up and they're trying to stay warm. Clothes are off because they know that they need to huddle together to stay warm.
Yep.
Something attacks them in their tent.
Okay.
crushing the tent down on them. Holy shit, we need to get out of here. They
Mhm.
can't use the button on the door because the tent, everything's collapsed down on them. They cut themselves out. They're running away. All of these like blunt force impact trauma and like damages to them suggest to me they were attacked by something physically that could have hurt them this way.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have, let's say for example, the guys that run to the tree start the fire. Well, the tree branches ripped down roughly, 15 feet high?
15 feet above the ground, yeah.
Seems reasonable for a Yeti if you think about what a Yeti might look like.
Yeah, Yetis reported between 8 and 10 feet tall.
Yeah. And here's what I could say again. You say the tree was a mile away from there?
About a mile, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's sure standing enough time for your adrenaline to go away. I don't really know how hypothermia works in extreme cold, but if you just got attacked by a fucking Yeti, I'm not sure you're thinking about being cold.
Probably not.
So why start the fire? It's so obvious you know where you are. You would never start a fire if you thought it was a human being chasing you because it's just a big ass beacon right to where you are, right?
Yeah.
The only thought is, if it's an animal, you start a fire because they're scared of fire.
Mhm.
The only two guys that are around the fire are the ones that had marks of fire on them, like burns,
Like they're trying to grab the wood almost.
to use it to fight against them.
Mhm.
Burn their hands, burn their face.
Okay.
Obviously not nearly enough to stop whatever it was that was coming after them. Then we have, let's say for example, how the bodies were moved.
Mhm.
That wasn't the Yeti. That was the Mansi people.
Mm.
Because they didn't want to make it look obvious. And they protect their legends. They protect the Yeti.
Mm.
So they move the bodies.
Okay.
They take their clothes probably because they're useful.
Mhm.
But maybe not because it'd be too obvious if they found them with their clothes. But it's a cover up on, let's just say not tribal people, but the native people, the local people, the long-standing people of the land that know about this place.
Okay.
Let's say again to the people in the ravine. They got away. They made their makeshift shelter. This is why there's time in between these attacks because I don't know how a Yeti would operate, but let's say it's more like an animal. They got away for a bit, but then it tracked them and found them. So they were able to survive long enough to make a little shelter, try and stay warm together, and then it came down there and it messed them up.
Some claim that the injuries due to the people in the ravine was possibly maybe the snow collapsed on them as well because they were under 4 meters of snow.
Potentially, so maybe they did get away.
Yeah. then
And they
something else
actually, they did, and then they got smushed by.
happened. And some
Yeah.
say there's possible animal predation.
Mm-hmm.
Possible, but
Yeah.
unlikely because animals wouldn't necessarily go for the eyes first.
Mm-hmm.
They would go for like the legs, the buttocks,
see,
stuff the most
I
meat.
agree. I don't think it's animals either.
Yeah.
And this is where I think perhaps it's the Mansi.
Mhm.
Because they want to try and confuse and send astray what might have happened there.
Yeah.
So they moved the bodies. They disfigured them because they were trying to paint a different picture than what really happened. And I remember you made a deal about why would they specifically say don't say anything about aliens? He said it on purpose because that's what he wanted people to think that happened.
To drive them away from the
To
Yeti
drive
theory.
them away from the Yeti theory.
Okay.
Why would you say
Yeah.
nothing about aliens? Why was there a Geiger counter brought out and why was there radioactive material found? Well, was there actually?
What if it was planted?
What if it was planted? And like the idea of aliens, it was easier to, because you got to think about going back in the day. A lot of people believe a lot more in like fae and like these types of creatures more than they believe in aliens, I feel.
Yeah.
Because they're organic, real beings. Like it's not out of this question to think there couldn't be a giant snake or a unicorn or a giant abominable man like covered in hair, right?
Yep.
So like the idea was to throw the bone at the aliens to try and mislead the people, just have them be like crazy kooks. Because about anything, if you throw aliens, everybody thinks you're crazy, especially at that point in time. So my accommodation for the radiation is it was part of a greater plan to try and mislead the public
Okay.
away from these truly like a true cryptid like organic being that like did evolve on Earth naturally to begin with, maybe hunted to extinction, maybe just natural selection or whatever. But yeah, it's to mislead the people. And I feel like maybe the so-called energy weapon could be attributed to that as well. And yeah, I'm trying to think of maybe some more like supporting aspects I could put towards this case, but none are coming to me at the moment.
Well, wait, I can't let you say that and then not have our local skeptic James
Yes,
say something.
James,
He looked like he was
what do
about
you
to have
think
a
here?
fucking aneurysm over there.
Are you still thinking radioactive rabies?
No, I dispelled that with the thought of explosions. I don't really know what to think. There is so much weird stuff that has gone on, and it could be any one thing. It could be any combination of things.
Mhm.
I like where Kyle was going with the cover up by the Mansi people. but there's so many different things that have gone on. It's hard to really
Mhm.
pinpoint anything. Which, if that was their goal, mission accomplished.
Yep.
Like, it's been 70 years,
Yep.
and we're still like, oh, I don't know.
And another weird thing about it being 70 years is that to this day, the Russian government is still suppressing evidence on it.
Yeah. So speaking of the Russian government,
Mhm.
the military was there.
Yep.
They're presumably the ones with the Geiger counters.
Yep.
They said there is radiation, and then pieced out and said nothing else.
It was
Why
a
would
part.
they even say that there was radiation there to anybody?
It was a part of the report from the lead investigator, Lev Ivanov.
It seems like a weird thing to let out in the first place, whether it was true or not.
I think it was
Did any?
throw the bone at aliens.
Is there any secondhand verification of any sort of radiation?
I don't think the government told the head investigator there's radiation. I think they were there with Geiger counters, and you can hear them going.
Right.
Right. So there's not just the military there. There's other search and rescue there.
Yeah, but they're presumably not shoulder to shoulder.
No, but there's other people down around the trees and stuff, and there's these guys in hazmat suits and Geiger counters going around. And
A good show is what that sounds like to me.
it's also a good show.
So in classic Soviet cover up, we don't really know what the hell happened.
Well, we never really know what
We-
happens. We just come to our own conclusion.
We don't know what happened. That's the weird thing about this, that every single theory has another hole that can get poked into it.
Yeah, there's lots of okay theories, but there's nothing that solid.
I'm just gonna go on record and say I think my theory is correct.
I'm feeling like we're coming down to it. Would you guys like to go to conclusions?
I think it's time for conclusions.
So, to go over what happened, 9 students go up Dead Mountain, all found dead. The tent is cut from the inside out. All their belongings, including their clothes and money, are still inside the tent. The tracks seem frantic. They split up at first and then calm down 100 meters away, then begin to walk single file. Some of the group are found with burns, severe injuries. Some are found with injuries that have only been attained through explosions or car accidents. There is radiation at the scene. There is strange burn marks and singes in the trees and some of the people. The military was involved and reportedly was there 2 weeks before the actual search and rescue was called. The Mansi people report that this is a strange area. Weird things happen. There were strange lights reported from 2 separate groups over the top of Dead Mountain that night, the same night that they reportedly died. I can go on and on. The basic theories so far: it was an avalanche, which we say nope. Military tests, which we say nope. A possible third party, which maybe, but I'm leaning on there's too many holes. No sign of internal conflict. No real reason for espionage. Sasquatch or Yeti attack. Again, possibility, but with lots of holes. Cursed or haunted by evil spirits. Possibility, but who knows. UFOs. Another possibility with the corroborating lights. I feel personally that that's something. Lev Ivanov, the head investigator of this case, claims that he thought it was aliens that killed these young men and women. We had the government telling Lev Ivanov not to mention anything about aliens or UFOs. We have Donnie Richard 2013 book Dead Mountain that claimed infrasound as a possible culprit for some of the issues,
Very interesting theory.
which does correlate with this area and how it would happen. So with that, Kyle, we rank this on a scale from 1 to 5.
Oh, okay. Yep.
1, I'm an idiot. 2, you guys are skeptical, but nothing really happened, you don't think. 3, you're on the fence. 4, there's something there, but I'm not a full believer that it's something paranormal. 5, I'm a believer that something paranormal happened here. So
Okay.
with that, what are your theories on this Dyatlov Pass incident?
Based off the snippets of information we've been given, there's something in my gut that really inclines me to say that something very, very odd happened there. Something that's not per se in the realm of men. It is something outside. Now, you could show people pictures of dinosaurs, and they would think, oh, there's no way this thing ever existed. Like, but it's like, nope, we have fossil records of this. And that would shock a lot of people. And so the idea of, let's say, a Yeti, an abominable man, giant, however you vision the Yeti, would seem just as preposterous as a dinosaur at that exact moment. And I feel like it's a common thing for locals to try and protect their legends and their creatures of the area. So I am leaning towards the Yeti here. But I'm also like, it's very odd because it doesn't seem like it was human beings that did this,
I don't think so.
but it does seem like there was a human element, and this is why I think it's the locals. What were they called again?
The Mansi.
The Mansi. I think this is why I lean towards them protecting their legends and their creatures of their area.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting theory. I've never heard it before, but I like the tie-in. It kind of
Yeah.
combines a lot of theories.
But I also don't think the theory of the sound is completely dispelled either.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's any reason why that couldn't also attribute to what happened.
Yeah.
Because it's like a double whammy effect, right? So that the mountain itself is like, and maybe that's why the so-called Yetis or whatever was there that was not human likes to be there.
Maybe that's why the Mansi people always said that there's something wrong with the mountain.
Exactly. But I will say, I'll openly admit here, I can't explain the lights. I could say, yeah, helicopters, military testing site, that would explain it. But by the sounds of it, it goes back a lot farther in the Mansi tribe about these so-called lights, which, maybe there's more to a so-called Yeti encrypted than just a basic organic life form that developed on this earth.
Mhm.
Maybe I think you mentioned something about like interdimensionalness and whatnot.
We joke a lot on this podcast about the theory of the interdimensional being Bigfoot.
Yeah, and that would accommodate, I feel like, for lights at that point, if this is what we're dealing with.
If you want to get really weird with it, there is a lot of times where UFO sightings and Bigfoot sightings correlate.
Yeah.
Why do UFOs have lights on them?
Why do UFOs have lights on them? I think you're misinterpreting. Like, it's not like a flying saucer. Some of them are just floating lights. There's sometimes strange lights that no one can explain that have been spotted all over the world. There's a lot of videos and stuff that you can find. And it's just another form of UFO, kind of up there, like there's flying saucers and stuff like that, or cigar-shaped UFOs. One of the other ones is the strange lights.
Yeah. So I'm getting here. I can't I'm not saying I don't believe in aliens. I mean, if you believe in the concept of infinity, it's technically impossible that aliens don't exist.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't sit well with me that it's aliens. I just don't believe it. And like, you could say that the lights, power of suggestion or manipulation, the lights, radiation, the pinpointed heat damage to trees and surrounding area could have been thrown in as a bone to distract you.
Possibly.
And the don't mention anything about aliens. Wow, that's very specific. And look at that. It got out to the public. Now, what we do have is a piece of paper where it said that the fucking snowmen were real, was it?
Yeah, it says, we now know the snowmen are real.
Okay, so
What the hell does that mean?
so hold on.
So-
I want to know
so-
Jake, what does Jake think of this piece of text?
Well, something I was going to mention is this group also did a lot of work for their school paper,
Mm-hmm.
and they did a joke column months prior to this about the Yeti. And they made a column joking about the Yeti being real and stuff like that. And I'm curious if maybe they were writing another one, maybe.
But could you imagine if you thought something was a joke and you found out it was real?
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't even know what their beliefs were on the thing. I just know they made a joke column. I know there's people who believe in Bigfoot and make jokes about it. But yeah, I know they did write a column months prior. A few of them did. They were part of the school paper.
Okay, so that is definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
With this whole,
It wasn't typed or anything. It was just written on a piece of paper. But yeah,
and would have been one hell of a coincidence.
yes. So I think it's strange. Just another thing that makes this case dumb complicated.
It should be noted that if also that mountain was a military test site. I mean, I feel like at that point, the military might have known about the Yeti then, if such thing existed. I don't know. It's very confusing. This is a tough thing to pinpoint.
Man, we can't talk about the Bigfoot calls. We're not that deep yet. But you can't talk about that yet. James is still just scratching the surface with me. We haven't gotten to Bigfoot calls yet. But yeah, no, it's weird.
I can't say I'm a huge believer in the cryptids and the aliens and stuff, like per se.
Yeah.
But something really weird happened here. Like, okay, so let's say it was aliens, right?
Yep.
I feel like almost every case that I've ever heard about of so-called aliens interacting with humans, abducting them, whatnot, they're just such like curious little bastards. They test, they do all these weird things. But for example, none of these people had seemed to have been messed with in the reproductive organs section.
Not from what I've read.
Which seems like out of place for aliens to me.
Yep.
Like I think with the Hill case that you did, obviously there's very traumatic recordings of like how they used needles like on the woman, and then like the man felt like he'd had like a semen sample taken.
Yep.
And that didn't seem to be the case with these people.
No.
You even mentioned the cows
Yeah.
had their genitals
Yeah.
taken.
Yeah, that's like
So-
a common thing.
Like I feel like sure there's other. I also am aware of the concept that there's multiple types of aliens that come here and they do their thing, but that seems to be a pretty strong through line through all these cases.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that like makes me. Okay, there's the piece of paper. Snowmen are real. Then there is the fact that what were they doing with them exactly,
Mhm.
and why would they cut their eyes out and like. They didn't take a lot from them per se. Like if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It's really coming to the case that almost a lot of these cases don't add up all the way.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
strange. It's hard to pinpoint it.
Yeah.
So with your theory, you're leaning to the Yeti crossed with the Mansi cover up.
I'm leaning towards. I really don't think this was a human thing. Like I don't think there was a human aspect that caused these people to all die.
So on our scale from 1 to 5, what are you thinking?
I'm gonna hit this one with a 4.
4. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you think something happened here? Not totally sure if it's paranormal or not.
Something happened here. Yeah, that wasn't by human hand.
So you're thinking Yeti.
I'm leaning towards Yeti. I guess my childhood imagination wants to believe in the Yeti, but this is the real world to contend with too. But how much of that is actually real?
Hey, if you're talking to me, I'd tell you the Yeti's fucking real. It's
Yeah.
James. It's James that's the problem here.
Okay, yeah. This is like I feel like because I'm the guest here. I'm just popping by. This is where the real deal is here.
Yeah, James.
What do you think, James?
My boy, my guy. What are you thinking on Dyatlov Pass? I've been very excited to show this one to you.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Mm-hmm.
There's been no extraordinary evidence of any kind. It's just a lot of weird shit.
How much radiation do you need?
I don't know how much there was. There was no Geiger counter reading. There was radiation, was it said to be there?
That's because the evidence is still suppressed.
I have no idea what happened. For all I know, it could be some military thing that happened, and then they messed with the bodies after.
Yeah.
Whether it was the military or the Mansi people,
Now, the
I don't know.
The Mansi, their suspicions did lift on them. I forget what they found on them, but they found that they weren't involved in this.
Either way, there's no one thing here that is necessarily unexplainable. Burn marks can happen, eyes can be removed, bodies can be beaten and brought into different places. It's a lot of weird stuff, don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
but I just have no idea.
But what could it have been? There's no tracks.
There's no tracks, but they're also sat there for a month in
They
the
sat-
snow.
They just sit there for a month.
And it is not impossible for tracks to be covered after a month in the snow
It is
by
not.
any means.
It is not.
So I'm
What
going to
what-
land no dilly dallying, no beating around the bush. We've wasted enough, not wasted. No beating around the bush. We've spent enough time on this.
Mhm.
I'm a 3 today.
You're on the fence. So you don't.
I'm on the
think-
fence. I have no idea what happened. Anything could have happened. I have no idea. It's just such a wild story, a weird case. There's so much weird stuff that happened. It could be military, it could be Bigfoot, it could be aliens, it could be the Mansi. I don't know.
Okay.
After all this, I don't know. So I'm a 3.
All right. We'll take your 3. The
It could be foxes that were radioactive and floating, and they didn't leave tracks behind them, and then they had little energy bursts that blasted the people backwards and bruised them.
well, we got you to a 3. I'm surprised you're only a 3, but I was excited to bring you this one, and I'm glad that I did.
Don't get me wrong. I loved this story. It was so interesting,
Yeah.
but it was so all over the place.
Yeah. No, it is. All right. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I hope I can bring you more. We're just scratching the surface on weird shit, and this is one of the weirder ones. I can't get James over the fence this week, but I got him right to it, and honestly, I don't blame him. There's a lot to this story, and every theory has a big hole you can poke through in every single one. If you like what we're doing here, follow us on Instagram and on Facebook for case photos. Follow us and review us on Spotify. Hopefully we'll see you next week. And if we've missed anything, please let us know. I'm only human, and I may have missed something. Thank you to Kyle for joining us this week. At the end of every episode, we ask for words to the wise. Kyle, do you have any?
Don't vacation in Siberia. That's my words.
And James, any words to the wise from you, my friend?
Chuvak, я на самом деле не знаю.
Can you translate?
Man, I don't fucking know.
Wise words from a confused man. We'll see you next week, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jake.
Спасибо. Всем.